That's how. Okay, Derek Lewis war cries done. Let's hop right into UFC St. Louis. I'm so amped, dude, because not only did we have a fun event for UFC St. Louis, but Dana White afterwards said that there will be less events in the UFC Apex going forward. That's got to be the greatest news we've heard in a long time, man. I think that I'm so excited for that. More fights in front of crowds. We need that. As Dana White said, that's how the UFC built its brand in the first place. What are your thoughts on that? And also, what are your thoughts on the crowd that we had in St. Louis that I thought was pretty good, honestly, myself?
That's great. That's great news and all that. It sounds great and all that, but here's where I'm gonna get a little picky, I guess, because I'd rather hear, even if it's like a deadline, like, hey, we get to UFC Vegas 100, that's it. No more Apex events ever. I'd rather hear, hey, we're not doing Apex. We're moving away from the Apex for good. But last Apex events, to me, we gotta be careful with Uncle Dana. Like to me, it's like, you know yeah, we're gonna do less Apex events, but the ones that we do, oh, like you're really gonna want to tune into them because we're definitely gonna give a shit about them and not make sure they're not watered down and like, you gotta. No, that's not what I'm so sure about, but if he is really gonna be a man of his word, then we're gonna see it less and less, and UFC Vegas 100
We do
will
need
be
that.
a banger card.
Like, I was going to say that to you, too. Like, we've been joking around about UFC Vegas
Dude,
100 for a
yeah.
while, but imagine if,
Isn't
like, it just
that
wasn't ever going to
yeah.
happen. That would suck. I'd be pissed. Low
I
key.
just I think the irony in that is funny that he says that now because like we are so close to UFC Vegas 100.
Just
It's
don't
like
rob us of that, Dana,
exactly.
please.
You can't stop it now. We got to get there first and then
I really
that's
can't
it.
wait to like plan something for that. Like we've been saying, like we really do have to do something special for it. We've been joking about it this whole time, but I think it would be kind of fun.
Yeah, at first my stance on it was in part in terms of like being okay with the amount of Apex cards, other than like the quality itself of the cards, and once again, UFC just kind of just chilling with the ESPN deal and all of that. For me, it was like okay, well, it makes the pay-per-views and the crowd cards. It makes it feel that much more like special and stuff. But it's gotten to the point now that it doesn't matter like when the crowd is like they're gonna show up, they're gonna be loud, and the fighter's gonna look to perform. So
But we should be clear too, like with the UFC Apex, our problem was never that it was in the Apex. Like, yeah, the energy is a bit dull, but it was the fact that it seemed like you were saying, they were just watering down cards in a sense. But for UFC St. Louis, we had a crazy card, honestly, from the prelims to the main card. We're only going to talk about a little bit of the main card today because we're also going to be talking Lomachenko versus Kambosos, which was crazy. So we'll get some boxing in there at the end. But to go to the main event, man, Derek Lewis just doing what Derek Lewis does. He had one of his typical performances, minus the fact that he kind of held his own in the grappling realm early in the rounds, even though he kind of struggled towards the end of the rounds there, getting held down. But besides that, Derek Lewis was hitting Nascimento
mm,
with his typical big shots. I think he hurt him in every round, basically. And then obviously in the third, he starched him, which is, we've seen Derek Lewis do to quite a few people in the UFC. But what did you think of Derek's performance here?
yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned the wrestling part of it in the first round because so for me it was like it seems like things were gonna start at least when we got to that third round. It definitely looked like he was gassed out, and then at the end of the first round, which I think it's pretty fair to say that he lost that first round. His corner, like they were like, just stop the wrestling and just incorporate the right hand, and it seemed like it was starting to get there, but you were afraid that the longer obviously the fight was gonna go, the less energy and obviously power that Derek Lewis would have to be able to put behind the right hand, which obviously what did not come to fruition because that's exactly how he got it done. But things were getting definitely a pretty dicey in there. I think a little bit for Derek Lewis. And then I think I was more just super impressed to see that when we got to that third round, that he did look tired, and was still able to put together that little combo, and obviously just the nasty right hand to get the finish.
I won't lie though. I feel like Derek Lewis kind of like undersells his cardio. Like I'm not saying he's like a cardio machine, but at the same time, like I think he says some of that to kind of make people like underestimate how far he could go because he's been in 5-round fights before, and obviously in this fight he gets the finish in the third round, so we didn't get to those championship rounds. But like I don't know, we've seen Derek Lewis at the end of a lot of fights start to like pick it up a little bit. Like the first one I think of is Alexander Volkov at UFC 229, that knockout at the very end. So like even when he looks like he's down and out, he never really is, which I think is something great about Derek Lewis that
but
everybody likes.
I think Nascimento did a good job of matching that pace, to be honest. And so that's kind of in a way why Derek Lewis's corner wanted him to get away from the wrestling.
How shocked do you think Nascimento was that Derek Lewis tried to grapple in the first round? Because he's holding Nascimento against the cage a little bit.
I would be overwhelmed too if that's how Derek Lewis was gonna look to start things. I mean, in a 5-round fight too. So
you wonder if he was trying to wear him down, honestly, because Nascimento, still a prospect, maybe wanted to test his cardio, and in a way, kind of worked out.
yeah, but. The Black Beast, he strikes again. And obviously, that was a win he needed. And after the fight, though, his balls and this time his ass were hot.
I'm waiting for the time where he just like strips completely. Honestly, I don't know if that's a sight that I need to see.
I think the event would have to be big. Like if this was freaking Derek Lewis on UFC 300 as like the main event, then he would have said fuck it. But
I mean, I don't know if ESPN. We were talking about the ESPN deal. I'm not sure if they'd take too kindly to that.
Exactly. This is a free fight night card, so.
But definitely. He's honestly like Derek Lewis is all entertainment at all costs. Like win or lose, that's the reason why people love Derek Lewis so much. Obviously, he hasn't had as much success as of late, but you see how much faith the UFC has in him by continuously putting him in main events, despite him not wanting to be in 5-round fights.
I don't blame him.
He's always awesome. I mean, in the cage, after the fights and the interviews, I literally wrote the quote here: "I couldn't let no taxi cab driver from Brazil beat me." Like you mentioned, taking his pants off, fanning his knocked out opponent with his pants, throwing the cup in the crowd, signing the cup for that reporter, and then mooning the crowd too. Like, it's not often you see that much after a fight.
Wow, what a night.
But I don't know if you heard this too. Derek and Dana were talking about possible WWE appearances in the future, and both of them seem to be very into that idea. And like Dana was really into it, honestly. He's like, I love Derek Lewis. I'd do anything for him. So, maybe that'll be what's next for him, because we've seen guys jump back and forth from pro wrestling to MMA before. I could definitely see Derek Lewis finding himself in that sort of position. But either way, that was such a fun main event.
Yeah, he just to revert back to him never wanting to be in 5-round fights, like I think he definitely like just went for broke in that. Even if it didn't even really look like he went for broke in that third round, it was literally just the perfect freaking right hand, and it's like there was just obviously enough power behind it, and that is all she wrote. So that's just what I love about Derek Lewis. Like it always really does take that one punch.
I mean, he has the touch of death, dude. It's crazy. Pretty sure it's either him or Matt Brown who has the most knockouts in UFC history. I remember they were flip-flopping for a while, so I'm not sure who.
Yeah, shout out to Matt Brown too, obviously.
Yeah, great career for him, but he announced his retirement for those who don't know. So respect to Matt Brown. He's a gamer too. Definitely.
The immortal.
And it's ironic that you bring up Matt Brown too. Let's go down to his weight class. 170 pounds. Then the co-main event, Joaquin Buckley versus Nursultan Ruziboev. Yeah.
It was flowing good. It was flowing good, but I think that's good.
Yeah, close enough. But he beats him by a pretty dominant unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-26, and then a 29-27. And the height difference was the first thing I noticed in this fight. Just because of, Nursultan was like 6'5", and Joaquin Buckley is, I think, 5'11". So that's just it's just crazy. It was
Yeah.
crazy. They looked like they were in two different weight classes. It's wild to think that Buckley was a pretty big 185 or two, and now he's fighting at welterweight. But he's looked incredible at 170, and this fight was no different.
He's super active too now. 170.
Dude, I mean, how could you complain about it though? He's another one who's one of the most exciting fighters on the roster, and him and his opponent
Yeah.
both on the same timeline. You know, obviously we went to Atlantic City for the weigh-ins and stuff, and we saw both of those guys on the scales then, so they're on the exact same timeline. And it didn't look like they were on the same wavelength though, because Joaquin Buckley dominated the fight. He showed a lot, I think, like a full mixed martial arts game. You know, he timed his takedowns really well, like it was very effective, and he picked his shots. I was really impressed by how disciplined he was, because I feel like in the past Joaquin Buckley would have kind of rushed in a little bit and gotten hit more by a guy who's that long like Nur Sultan is. But Buckley looked so disciplined in his striking and his grappling, and overall I was just super impressed. And now he's 4-0 at welterweight. So
Yeah, I think that's something that's definitely gonna help propel him to the top of the division in terms of obviously just refraining from how much he gets hit, and then with Joaquin Buckley he's able to give it back that much harder. But like you said, and he's able to just put on a full well-rounded display of mixed martial arts in terms of maybe not great at one particular thing aside from how hard he hits, but being able to still get those takedowns and defend and just scramble on the ground and stuff. Like, I think that's definitely kind of like the X factor of what can make Joaquin Buckley a true contender at 185.
170.
Not 170,
Yeah.
170.
No, I get you.
Um,
Looks like he could be a 185, honestly,
Yeah.
sometimes. But I just think that, we're really seeing him improve so much. Like, I remember at middleweight, you really were just afraid of him on the feet, and not even particularly because of his technique, mostly because of his explosiveness. But at 170, he really looks like he's rounded out his game so well, and you really have to at that weight class. There's so many good grapplers. You can't be one-dimensional. And then you think of the guys that he called out. First, he called out Conor McGregor, and Joaquin Buckley, Conor McGregor, sadly, is just not on the UFC's radar. But then after the fight, he mentioned Gilbert Burns, and that's a fight that I really love when I think about it. I don't know about you.
I would say I do, because we've talked about it before with Gilbert Burns, and we just saw it with his last fight too, how he is obviously willing to scrap and brawl with guys on the feet, in order to get better there and whatnot, and then obviously just get more respect on, because I feel like obviously Gilbert Burns doesn't get enough respect on his name for how good he really is, and because of I guess his style.
I think he's just a chill guy too. There's a lot of people who talk crap at 170, and Gilbert's just kind of doing his thing. I mean, the real fans love him.
I think those two could definitely give each other some pretty good fits on the feet, but when it comes to the ground game, I think I'd want to see more I think I'd want to see another step up an opponent for Joaquin Buckley before that Gilbert Burns fight.
I'm just checking the rankings real quick because I am curious. So Buckley is number 11 as we record this on Monday. He might go up a little bit tomorrow because
the Luke Haven was obviously super encouraging, and then obviously he really wanted to fight on this card for his hometown, and obviously the that height difference didn't matter with this fight. So
I mean, I'm gonna be honest though, I'm looking at the rankings, and right now Buckley's 11, but in front of him is Stephen Thompson and Jeff Neal, who I believe are both coming off losses. So if you technically were to put Buckley above them, he would be number 9, and Gilbert's number 6. So that's not it's crazy that we're kind of seeing the turning of the tides in all these weight divisions, because Gilbert Burns for a while was in that welterweight top 3, but you mentioned the step up, even from 11 to 6, that's not that crazy if you really think about it. I mean, in between there, you mentioned grapplers. Sean Brady is number 8. Maybe you could do that. And I don't think that the UFC is thinking of Joaquin Buckley and Ian Gary on the same kind of wave. I feel like they'd want to push both of them, not put them up against each other. But very interesting. I mean, 170 is always super exciting, but honestly, respect to Joaquin Buckley for what he did. But to move on to a much, much quicker fight, Carlos Ulberg versus Alonzo Menifield lasted 12 seconds. Ulberg starched him pretty badly, And I'm curious of what you think in this fight because I think Ulberg is a really good striker, but I'm still not sold on him. And not because I don't think that his striking is that good. I just think they keep putting him up against opponents where they're good stylistic matchups for him. Like
Mm.
Menifield's explosive. He tries to like close the distance and attack with his athleticism. And a guy like Ulberg who has such like strong technique, he's gonna land those counters. And I feel like we need to see him take a step up before I am fully sold on him, honestly. But I don't know what you think.
I mean, to me, I guess Alonzo Menifield was feeling the same way because at the same time, Alonzo, I think that's kind of just who Alonzo Menifield is, just kind of that more wild side, of of a striker in terms of because he is so athletic and strong that it does take that one big blow. But I mean, here like I really would have tried to feel out Ulberg just a little bit first before just straight up going for the finish as fast as possible because obviously that's what Ulberg was able to pull out. And I think I think in the sense of what you're saying, in the sense of we gotta still see that step up, like yeah, especially after just a fight that lasted just 12 seconds. Like I think now it's definitely obviously like he gave us the highlight and stuff. That's great. Um, so I think there probably shouldn't be a lot of time to wait either before we see that. So
Yeah, and it's not like Ulberg like hasn't fought anybody. Because let me just double check that I'm right before I say this. He's 10-1 now, obviously with this win, and yeah, so like they had him booked against Dominic Reyes twice, if we remember. That's still a fight that I like. You talk about step up. That could be an option because Reyes, obviously hasn't looked like himself these past few years, but he's still, I'd say, pretty well respected at 205. But I don't know. Like, I guess I don't know if I want to see him against another grappler or like somebody who's going to try and take him down, or if I want to see him against a striker like Dominic Reyes who can maybe test uh, that stand up game. But he's in an odd position because I remember when did he lost like a while back. Yes, UFC 259. Like I remember they were pushing him then because he had just won on the Contender Series and he lost pretty badly. And then since then he's won 6 straight now. So clearly he's gotten better. I mean, literally his last 5 wins are all finishes, and 4 of them are in the first round.
I mean,
So
yeah, I get UFC's point of view of it, obviously. But us as fans, like we want to see. I think we definitely want to see that test by now, because I think we've all have known. At least have heard of Carlos Obu for a while now, in terms of obviously one of Izzy's training partners and whatnot. So yeah, I think he's definitely had the hype around him, like when Izzy was still champion and stuff too. So
yeah. And like how many more guys do we need him to starch before he gets a chance to really prove himself in the rankings or even just near it?
hmm
But besides that, I mean, the card, it had like its pretty good moments besides that. Diego Ferreira obviously stopped a 16 fight winning streak, which was crazy with like one of the just most brutal TKOs I think I've ever seen. When you look at Rebecca's face afterwards, that was kind of wild to look at. But then, besides that, Sean Woodson beating Alex Caceres by unanimous decision, called out Bryce Mitchell, who seems like he wants to take that fight.
that's a good call out.
Really, and it's a good fight too, like stylistically. I'm curious what a grappler like Bryce Mitchell could do against Sean Woodson, who
Bryce
obviously has really
is
long legs, but is
Bryce
a good
is
striker.
coming off of the Poirier loss.
The
Or,
Emmett one.
the Emmett one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's been a little bit since that now,
Yeah.
and obviously Woodson's not going to be fighting him next week, so hopefully the extra time give Bryce that time to recover a little more. Although he seems to be taking that very seriously because that was a brutal knockout, and he said he was putting himself
Yeah.
on like a
Right. Yeah.
self-proclaimed concussion protocol, and like that's kind of smart, honestly. But then besides that, we've talked about Robelis to Spain on this show. We've had some hype behind him. Waldo Cortez Acosta completely kind of derailed that, although it wasn't super exciting. But, Robelis lost. He's going to have to rebound from that. I'm curious to see how he does because he is a good striker. But you never know what we could see there. But UFC St. Louis, really fun card overall. The fans were electric. Glad we're going to be getting to see more of them, hopefully, over the next few months. I feel like Dana's telling the truth with that. He's got to see what the fans are saying. And, you know, you don't have to completely eliminate Apex events, but at least don't put like little to no effort into them, because some of those events in 2023 and early this year, they've been kind of lackluster at times because of that, and I think maybe they're starting to see that. But to move on to boxing, we got to talk about Vasily Lomachenko, because he dominated George Kambosos to grab the IBF lightweight title, 11th round TKO. And Lomachenko has always been one of my favorite boxers to watch. He mixes it up between the head and the body so well, and this fight was no different. And against a guy like Kambosos too, who's a former champion himself, he made it look easy. I mean, Lomachenko's 36 years old now, and he's becoming a champion again at lightweight, where there's so many big fights for him to get. I just thought it was really impressive. I mean, he outlanded him. I wrote this down too because I thought the stat was crazy. Outlanded Kambosos 175-40. Lomachenko did, and we had to talk about it. Like, I remember when we were scheduling it out for the next few pods, we were talking about, oh well, yeah, maybe we'll talk about Loma versus Kambosos if there's something big that comes out of it, and boy, was there something big, because he looked like he turned back the clock a little bit to get this win. I don't know what you thought of it, though. I obviously threw this one in kind of a little bit last minute. But
the washed allegations were definitely, they were sounding pretty heavy coming into his fight for Loma, and he clearly beat them and then some with this fight. Like on Kambo's side, I think Kambo's always been that guy who's and why he's always been able to be so well respected and get the kind of fights that he does is because he is so well rounded and good at just about everything. But not like Loma, in the sense that Loma can really systematically beat you down throughout each round with punches to the body and the head. Campbell's the guy who's just a bit more crafty and stuff, but I think for when you're across from Lomachenko, I think it's definitely gonna take more than that. I think this would have definitely told us what we needed to know about Loma, in the sense if he lost, this was probably the peak of what he was gonna get for the rest of his career in terms of that big money fight. And if he wasn't able to get past it, then that would have really been unfortunate. But once again, those washed allegations for now he clearly beat them.
And for his next fight, you could argue he deserves maybe a Devin Haney rematch, because that was a good fight when they had that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Tank Davis called him out too. Those are two really exciting fights, big money fights. I think that they would be really interesting to have either of those. And I don't know, which of the two would you want to see more between those, Tank or Haney?
I mean, I think I'd want to see them both equally the same. I don't think you can really go wrong with either one, to be honest.
Isn't it weird that Haney is still champion? People forget about that, because that Ryan Garcia loss was so just brutal, but Haney's still got those belts, man.
For me, I would think I would want to. I think it would be really intriguing for me, because I think I would know Devin Haney would be able to hang all 12 with Loma. For me, it's once we get into those later rounds with Tank, is that cardio really gonna keep up, especially with Loma, as well as Loma is able to work the body, like we were just saying. I think Tank would be the one that's really shoot for that knockout. So I think that's kind of the contrast there. Haney fight would be, I think, throughout all 12 rounds, probably wouldn't be a dull moment. Whereas with the Tank fight, I think to start there would be a lot of fireworks. But obviously with Loma across from him, I think if Loma is able to last and stuff, then it's just probably going to be all Loma from there.
Yeah, well, we've been saying this for the last few podcasts, boxing has been so fun lately, and it seems like it's only getting better. And we talk about our next show, and that's going to be fully boxing centric. Fury versus Usyk coming up this weekend, the Ring of Fire.
Yeah,
and I can't wait.
The day we're recording this, the freaking build up for that has wasted literally no time.
Yeah, John Fury. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. they're that family, man. They're a bunch of warriors, that's for sure. But I mean, Saudi Arabia, those guys are giving us a lot of the big boxing fights that we want to see. So, gotta
Yeah, I
respect
think
that.
we've always been able to count on Saudi Arabia for that, to be honest.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that promoter, Turkey Al. I'm always bad at
Mm.
saying his last name, but he's he he doesn't take no for an answer really. He's like, how much money do you guys want to settle this? And it happens. He makes fights happen, and boxing needs that. So I'm glad that we get to
Mm.
see the two best heavyweights right now face off. You know, Anthony Joshua is still in that conversation, especially after that Ngannou knockout. And you know, boxing purists will say, "Oh, well, Ngannou's an MMA fighter," but Tyson Fury couldn't do that to Ngannou, even if he wasn't fully expecting Ngannou to be as good as he was. Anthony Joshua finished him like that, so you wonder what he has to say about the winner of this fight. But besides that, you know, that'll be our show next week. We do have a special announcement coming very, very soon. We could say it today, but we're going to dedicate a special video for it. So this will be coming out Tuesday night. Check out or stay tuned Wednesday night for the announcement. It's a pretty big deal for us. We're really excited to tell you guys about this. So definitely stay tuned on the channel for Wednesday night, and we'll see you all then, pretty much.
Yes. Hey,